Oh yeah, do we have an entrance? I'm going to pole vault in. Six down, two to go. Who's they? Oh, hello. Well, I got a call from my Egyptian friend, and he watched the video. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. And he said, you know, yes. He said, you know what? I think we need to redo it. And I said, why? He said, well, you know, it was my first time translating, and so I wasn't always sure what the next slide was, and when you would say something, I didn't know it, and then I would translate it literally and not necessarily spiritually, and all of these Arabs around the world, they're not going to know, they know nothing. They need milk, and we're giving them meat, and we have to translate it better. And they know nothing. So he's absolutely right on everything. And I had to call, no, we're going to break it into 3 shorter videos. But I had to call the girl who edits and break the news to her. All this work that you and I have been doing for the last month, gone. I don't see it up here. Oh, okay. Okay, today we're talking, if I stay awake, this is my nap time, by the way. Every day when I teach, I usually sleep in the afternoon and then get up and come. Okay, where's our first slide? Huh? Put in your, we don't normally do requests, unless of course you're requested to do so. We're having technical difficulties. We will be with you soon. Okay. We can count these 2. There's a dozen. A lot of times the first slide is blank white. Did you try that? Okay. Okay. Feelings, nothing more than feelings. This will inspire him to get it up and running. You don't want to. because we're going to do Seasons in the Sun next. We'll get her up here. Hey, there's something. That is. Yay. Okay, today we're talking about Shimshon. This is funny. When I went to Israel, and I was telling my friend about, I was trying to give him some really cool tie-in with Samson and Jesus. So I'm telling him, well, you know the story of Samson. He said, no, who? I said, Samson. I swear we went 10 minutes. I kept trying to explain, Samson, you know, long hair. That didn't help. And he finally clicked. It was Shimshon. It's so funny that the Jews, I'm going to say, they say it differently. They say it correctly. We've changed it. And so you really need, when you're talking to real Jews, you need to get the names right in their lingo to get these points across to them. Okay, next. Okay, in the book of Judges is where you'll find the Samson story. And there are, what is it, 6, 12? They mention 12 judges in the book of Judges. And Samson is the last of the 12. Okay? Deborah is probably the one, and Gideon, you've heard of those two. The other, I don't know so much. Okay, next. You know what Deborah, by the way, Deborah, what does her name mean? Anyone? It's associated with bees. Okay, just don't know what that's. But this isn't one of them. Okay, so now, so we're starting in Judges 13. Now the sons of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord, so that the Lord gave them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. And there was a certain man of Zorah, of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had borne no children. All right? Manoah, by the way, Manoah means rest. And it's not Manoah with an H, it's Manoah with a chet on the end. Okay? And you see Noah's name is in there, right? All right? Next. Verse 3. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold now, you are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and give birth to a son. Now this angel of the Lord, angel is Melech, and Melech Yahweh. We see Melech Yahweh showing up a lot in the Tanakh, in the Old Testament. That's the same one we just saw. Okay, next. Here we have in Judges 6, the Melech Yahweh appeared to him and said, this is Gideon, the Lord is with you, O valiant warrior. When Gideon saw that he was the angel of the Lord, he said, Alas, O Lord God, for I have now seen the angel of the Lord face to face. The Lord said to him, peace to you, do not fear, you shall not die. So there's a lot of clues in there. This angel of the Lord is God, is Yahweh, right? It's a pre-incarnate Jesus, or, Yeshua. And, there's the saying in there about if you see God, and the Jews always bring this one up to me. You cannot see God. If you see God, you will die. And I bring up all these examples. Well, Gideon saw God. Jacob saw God. Abraham saw God. Moses saw God. There's a whole bunch of them who did see God. In fact, there was one of them, Moses, Aaron, and 70 others, or 70-some others went up, and they all had lunch with him, All right. Now here's in Joshua 5. The captain of the Lord's host said to Joshua, remove your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy. And Joshua did so. Well, the only time you get holy ground is when Yahweh is there. So Joshua saw him. In Numbers 22, the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord. So others saw, many see. All right, next. The angel of the Lord made the promise to Manoah's wife and said, now therefore be careful not to drink wine or strong drink, nor eat any unclean thing. For behold, you shall conceive and give birth to a son, and no razor shall come upon his head, for the boy shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb. And he shall begin to deliver Israel from the hands of the Philistines. Notice, he's not going to deliver them. He's only going to begin to deliver them. Somebody else will finish the job. And when you see the Philistines, that's a hint to, because we know David is going to conquer Goliath, so they're still fighting the Philistines later, and they'll get them then. But he's going to begin, because remember, they've been ruling for 40 years, it said. Next. Yeah. Now, he says here that there's this Nazarite vow. So we're going to discuss that in a minute here. Next. Then the woman came and told her husband, saying, a man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God, very awesome. And I did not ask him where he came from, nor did he tell me his name. But he said to me, behold, you shall conceive and give birth to a son, and now you shall not drink wine or strong drink, nor eat any unclean thing, for the boy shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. And now this Nazarite vow, we can learn about it back in Numbers chapter 6. The Lord said to Moses, this is explaining the Nazarite vow, speak to the Israelites and say to them, if a man or woman wants to make a special vow, a vow of dedication to the Lord as the Nazarite, so from this we can learn, if. That tells you a Nazarite vow is voluntary. And it can be done by a man or a woman. A lot of little clues in there. And you see the word here for man and woman, ish and isha. Remember we said yesterday, when it has that hey on the end, that's usually feminine. Okay? Next, I wanted to show, I put this slide in this morning. We know that God is that fire, right? He was the fire in the burning bush, right? He was also that fire in the burning fire that went through the cut up pieces when he was talking to Abraham. So God shows up as a fire, and the word for fire is ash. We get the word ash comes from that, all right? And the two letters. Do you have a note for being late? That's not an excuse. Okay, so the letters for fire, it's an aleph. Aleph was the strength. It's the head of the ox, right? Strength, strong. And shin was teeth, destruction. So you put those two together, aleph, shin, you have strong destruction. And what destroys everything? Fire. It's very clever how he weaves that meaning in there. Okay? And it says that we were made in God's image. So, if you look at the word for man, notice it has an aleph and a shin in it. And he just put his hand, yud, down in between. So man is made in God's image. And woman also has an aleph shin in it. For Isha. Right? And the letter that he added for man is yud. The letter he added for woman is hey. Next. And you know what? If you have a man and a woman in a relationship, if you don't have God in the relationship, if you take the yud out and the hey out, what are you left with? Two fires that are consuming one another. The relationship doesn't work. Very clever, huh? All right, next. Okay, so there's the if a man or woman wants to make a special vow, if they want to. We already mentioned that, it's voluntary. Next. So here are all the rules. It's voluntary, man or woman. It's also a specific time frame. When you make this Nazirite vow, you do it for a year or 6 months or whatever you choose. It's not forever, okay? But there are, huh? Oh, we're not moving it yet. And there are some who dedicated their child from birth, okay? And there are some specific requirements and restrictions, which we'll see on the next slide. And when the Nazirite vow is over, there is a sacrifice that's offered. All right. Next. And those special requirements, one of them is no grapes. Nothing from grapes. Okay? The next requirement is no haircuts. Thank you. And the third requirement is you may not touch anything dead. No dead bodies, no corpses. Okay? You like that font too? All right. Next. And the word Nazirite comes from a bigger Hebrew word. Next. Nazar. Nazar means to separate or consecrate. And you can see how you're separating yourself from the masses, the common, right, to become a Nazirite. Next. Let's go to the next one, because this will come up again. By the way, Nazirite is different than Nazarene. Okay? Jesus is from Nazareth. He's a Nazarene, not a Nazirite. They're completely different words. Nazareth comes from the word netzer. Netzer means branch. All right? In Isaiah, it talks about, and there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. There's the word and branch, va, netzer. Okay? Now, in the book of Matthew, let's go to the next one. In the book of Matthew, Matthew says, and he came and dwelt in a city called, this is about Joseph and Mary, right? He came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. Well, nowhere in the Old Testament is it prophesied that he's going to be called a Nazarene, which is odd that Matthew would put this. But Since Nazareth actually means, it's Netzeret in Hebrew, which is branch town. And so when Isaiah said that a branch will come from, that's the fulfillment of that prophecy. Because he's going to be from Netzeret, from branch town. Make sense? All right. And here's more rules for the Nazirite vow. He shall abstain from wine and strong drink. He shall drink no vinegar, whether made from wine or strong drink. Nor shall he eat any drink any grape juice, nor eat grapes or raisins. All the days of his separation he shall not eat anything that is produced by the grapevine, from the seeds or the skin. All the days of his vow of separation no razor shall pass over his head. He shall be holy until the days are fulfilled, for which he separated himself to the Lord. He shall let the locks of his hair on his head grow long. Yeah, I got a jug full of grape juice. Okay, next. I like this. All the days of his separation, he is holy to the Lord. It's rare that I can read an entire Hebrew sentence, but this one I can actually read, and so can you. But you just don't know that you can. Here, this first word is kaf lamed, that's kol. We've talked about that word this week sometime. That's the word for all. Remember we mentioned the word dog was kol lev. Lev is heart. Kol lev, all heart. So here's all. The second word is yameh, and yam is the word for day. It's one of those things you knew, but you didn't remember. Okay? So when you pluralize it, you put a yud on the end. So here's all the days, and here's our new word, nitzro. You put a vav on the end, that's possessive, his separation. Kodesh, there's holy. Who, that's one we may not have known. Who means he. And I'll show you that in a second. And then you put a lamed in front, that's to Yahweh. Okay? That gets confusing that who is he. You know, go to the next one. Yeah, and he is she. And you know what? My Arab friend in Israel, Muhammad, he always starts sentences if he's talking about Reuben or he's talking about Shai or he's talking about a guy, he always refers to them as she. And I'm saying, no, you mean he. And I didn't understand why he kept mixing that up until I realized that he is she. The word in Hebrew, it's he. So whenever he wants to say whenever he wants to say, well, you understand. Yeah, he gets it mixed up, and I keep correcting him, and now I know why he gets it mixed up, because he's got Arab in his head, and Hebrew, and English, and so, okay. So here's a good way to remember it. Who is me? Right? He is who, as she is he, and we are all together. Goo goo gajoo. Only people of a certain age are going to get that. All right. Now, this is the law of the Nazirite. When the period of dedication is over, they are to be brought to the entrance of the tent of meeting. Then at the entrance of the tent of meeting, the Nazirite must shave off the hair that symbolizes their dedication. They are to take the hair and put it in the fire that is under the sacrifice of the fellowship offering. Remember I told you he has to let his hair grow, and then he has to do an offering at the end of his period of this. This is the law of the Nazirite who vows offerings to the Lord in accordance with their dedication. All right, next. And this is just to remind you that we're not doing all this. This is our dedication. This is our sacrifice. I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God. Okay, next. This is kind of saying the same thing. He saved us and called us to a holy life. That is our sacrifice. Next. But like the Holy One who called you, be holy yourselves. More New Testament admonitions for this. Next. Okay, back to the Judges 13. Then Manoah entreated the Lord and said, O Lord, notice the word Lord here. What is that? Adonai. Okay. O Lord Adonai, please let the man of God whom you have sent come to us again, that he may teach us what to do for the boy who is to be born. And God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman as she was sitting in the field, but Manoah, her husband, was not with her. So the woman ran quickly and told her husband, Behold, the man who came the other day has appeared to me. Then Manoah arose and followed his wife, and when he came to the man, he said to him, Are you the man who spoke to the woman? And he said, I am. Yeah, you know what? It's not the same. It's not the same. No. I checked that because I was all ooh and nod. Manoah said, Now, when your words come to pass, what shall be the boy's mode of life and his vocation? So the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, Let the woman pay attention to all that I say. He should not eat anything that comes from the vine, or drink wine or strong drink, nor eat any unclean thing. Let her observe all that I command. So he's letting him know he wants him to be a Nazirite. Then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, Please let us detain you so that we may prepare a young goat for you. The angel of the Lord said to Manoah, Though you detain me, I will not eat your food. But if you prepare a burnt offering, then offer to the Lord. For Manoah did not know that he was the angel of the Lord. Which, if the angel of the Lord is the Lord, it's Yeshua. He did not know he was God. Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, What is your name? This is good here, watch this. Manoah, the husband, said to the angel of the Lord, What is your name? So that when your words come to pass, we may honor you. Good question. Next. And the angel of the Lord said to him, Why do you ask my name, since it is wonderful? The word wonderful may not be wonderful. It could be wonder or wondrous, or in fact, I have different translations here. It's in Hebrew, it's pili. The NIV says beyond understanding. The NAS is wonderful. The King James is secret. The New Living is too wonderful to comprehend. This is something big. Its name, pili, right? Okay. Next. And we see this word somewhere else in the Bible. We see it here in Isaiah 9:6. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, government is upon his shoulder, and he will be called by his name. Wonderful. That's the first one there. And this verse tells you it's not, by the way, it's not wonderful counselor. He's not a wonderful counselor. He's wonderful, comma. He's counselor, comma. He's El Gibor, mighty God. El and Gibor is mighty. Okay, El Gibor. He's not Ava and Jaja's brother. Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. But when he says mighty God, well, that tells you that whoever this is going to be born, and this is one that I throw to the Jews and let them say, well, explain this. And it's the El Gibor that they have to get around. And they can't. They do a lot of talking, but not much comes out. Okay, so Yeah, it's the same thing. Next. And that's the same verse. It's just in, here it is, the L. Here's the Pele. Next. So this ties in to Manoah. Manoah doesn't realize this, but we realize looking back. Whoever this was answering Manoah is also this one who's going to be born of a virgin, born a son is given. Okay, those two are connected. And they're connected to the angel of the Lord. That's who this is talking about. Next. I want to show you this word Pele. Pele is a Pei, Lamed, Aleph. Good. And Pei is 80, Lamed is 30, Aleph is 1, which adds up to 111. So that kind of gives you a hint as to who it is, right? And if you remember from talks long ago, 37 is God's number. We could do a whole 2 hours on that. But show this up next one here. 111 is 3 times 37. There's God's number in there. And you know what else is clever about this word Pele? And next, please. The word Pele is the word Aleph backwards. Well, that's kind of clever because we know Aleph is God's letter, right? The head of the ox, the strength. That's Aleph. Now, remember, the letter Pei, it's one of those letters that has a final form. That if it shows up as the last letter of a word, it takes a different shape. So there's Alephs, there's Lameds, and both of these are Pei, but this is a different Pei because this is the last letter of the word. So when he says his name is Pele, it's almost like a little trick, a little mystery, a little, a puzzle. Yes. Next. And Aleph would also add up to 111. That's a complex unity. There's 3 ones. Next. And this is kind of interesting. Since we're here and we got all night. Notice Genesis 1:1 begins Bereshit bara Elohim. The first letter of the Bible is a bet. Why did he begin the Bible with the second letter of the alphabet and not Aleph? He's God. You would think he would, boom, the 10 Commandments start with Aleph. What else? His title, Elohim, starts with Aleph. I am that I am, Aya, Ashur, Aya, starts with Aleph, all 3 of them. But he started the Bible with a bet. Here's why, in my opinion. Oh, and by the way, look what all the Alephs he puts in the first verse. He puts it third letter and then third letter. And then he puts it first letter and first letter. And then he puts it as second letter and second letter. I think that's a little hint as to his complex unity. Just the placement of the Alephs. But again, why didn't he begin the Bible with an Aleph? Because Aleph is God. Next. Aleph is out front. He's out here in eternity past. Make sense? And Bet is a house. That's the picture. And Bet is the house that God is going to come and live in. Bet is also the abbreviation for son, right? In fact, the first 2 letters, Bet Resh, spell son, bar. And the first 3 letters, Bet Resh Aleph, spells Son of God. Okay? So the book is about the Son of God, and he's out front dictating it in eternity past. Next. In fact, Nothing new there. Oh, yeah, there's something new here. Look at this. Okay, well, you know, this Aleph here, Aleph, how do you spell Aleph? Aleph, Lamed, Pei. Well, Aleph is strong, strength. Lamed is the shepherd's crook. So just the first two letters of Aleph, Lamed spell L. That's God. And Pei, its picture is a mouth. Next. So Aleph, if you broke it down, it's kind of like from the mouth of God. Right? So if you have an Aleph sitting out in front, it's from the mouth of God. It comes, Bereshit bara Elohim. You like that? Next, you're going to like this better than them. Okay, here's the Aleph sitting out front from the mouth of God, Aleph. We put the letter, but let's put the spelling. Next. There, we put the spelling. Aleph, Lamed, Pei. Aleph, Lamed is L, Pei is mouth. Next. And there's Pei, there's two kinds of mouths. There's an open mouth, front row. It's all women. Sis Boomba. Oh, and there's the closed mouth. So the closed mouth is the regular Pei. The open mouth is the final form Pei. You can see the difference, right? And watch this. Next. Here's that word Aleph. Anyone see a problem with this? It's not the right Pei on the end. This is the closed mouth Pei. But imagine if this is what was out in eternity past. Next, please. Look what fits inside that Pei. It's a bet. It fits nicely, doesn't it? Next. So here you have Aleph sitting out in eternity past with a bet in his mouth. Next. And then he opens his mouth and out comes Bereshit bara Elohim, the Torah. Isn't that nice? Is it? Oh, okay. Huh. All right, next. Okay, back to Samson. Then Manoah took a young goat together with the grain offering and sacrificed it on a rock to the Lord. And the Lord did an amazing thing while Manoah and his wife watched. As the flame blazed up from the altar toward heaven, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame. Seeing this, Manoah and his wife fell with their faces to the ground. When the angel of the Lord did not show himself again to Manoah and his wife, Manoah realized that it was the angel of the Lord. Ding, something, click, next. We are doomed to die, he said to his wife. We have seen God. So Manoah now is equating the angel of the Lord to God. His wife answered, if the Lord had meant to kill us, he would not have accepted the burnt offering and grain offering from our hands, nor shown us all these things, or now told us this. We talked about burnt offerings earlier, remember? A burnt offering was, I'm giving this just because God, remember, it's a voluntary offering. We want to make you a burnt offering. And there it is, the burnt offering. And the woman gave birth to a boy and named him Shimshon. He grew and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him while he was in Mahana Dan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. Okay, next. I want to put out these three verses, just connect them, which we've already connected them. But here, we know that the angel of the Lord appeared. This is the angel of the Lord. Next. And here the angel of the Lord says, why do you ask my name, since it is Peli? So we know the angel of the Lord is Peli. You might want to wait on the next one. Next. And then he said, we are doomed to die because we have seen God. So we know that angel of the Lord is Elohim, is Kali. It's connecting all three of them. So angel of the Lord is God. Okay, next. She named him Shimshon. And if you notice the spelling of his name, Shin, Mem, Shin, Vav, Noon. That's a final noon, right? It's the last noon is life, right? But if it's a final noon, it looks like a Vav, but it goes way down below the line. Next. And here's another Hebrew word you might know, Shemesh. Shemesh means sun. And notice Shin, Mem, Shin. Samson is sunshine. Okay? Next. All right. Then Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. So he came back and told his father and mother, I saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me as a wife. Okay. Just push it about this speed. Now Timnah, if you remember, Timnah was kind of like the Vegas of its time. It shut it down? No, I left it. I used a blank screen at the end. Yeah. I did. So you can go up and down for a while, and I'll talk over it. Because that used to be the place. You'd say, what happens in Timnah stays in Timnah. But this whole thing with Samson, and you know who else went down to Timnah? Judah went down to Timnah, and that's where he found Tamar dressed as a prostitute. That was also in Timnah. So when things stopped staying in Timnah, they dropped the slogan and Vegas took it. It took forever to make these. Because every dot, every line, every thing had to be put in one at a time. When you're on a 16-hour flight from Bombay to Newark, what else are you going to do? All right, let's go back. Let's get back. Then his father and his mother said to him, is there no woman among the daughters of your relatives or among all your people that you go and take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she looks good to me. Now, I don't know if you know how the book of Judges ends, but this is how the book of Judges ends. In those days, there was no king in Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes. So Samson says, get her for me. All right? However, his father and mother did not know that it was of the Lord, for he was seeking an occasion against the Philistines. Now, at that time, the Philistines were ruling over Israel. Remember, this is the first verse we talked about. They had been ruling for 40 years because Israel did bad in the eyes of the Lord. Then Shimshon went down to Timnah with his father and mother and came as far as the vineyards of Timnah, and behold, a young lion came roaring toward him. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, so that he tore him as one tears a young goat. I have to stop there. Has anyone here torn a young goat? Deborah, of course. Besides Deborah. With her bare hands. this morning. That's just an odd, that's an odd comparison. I don't know if we can all relate to that. Though he had nothing in his hand, but he did not tell his mother and father what he had done. But once he kills the lion, well, now he's touching a dead thing. So now he's breaking the Nazirite vow. Right? Okie dokie. So he went down and talked to the woman, and she looked good to Samson. When he returned later to take her, he turned aside to look at the carcass of the lion, and behold, a swarm of bees and honey were in the body of the lion. So he scraped the honey out into his hands and went on, eating as he went. When he came to his father and mother, he gave some to them, and they ate it. But he did not tell them he had scraped the honey out of the body of the lion. He can't do that because that honey becomes unclean, It's like saying, hey, would you like a cookie? And I not tell you it fell on the floor. Kind of a modern version, right? Except this is ceremonially unclean. But I guess spare the fright, share the delight. Next. Or no sweat, no sweet. He had to. Next. No conflict, no conquest. Next. No cross, no crown. There has to be the bad to enjoy the good. Next. Then his father went down to the woman, and Shimshon made a feast there, for the young men customarily did this. When they saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. Then Shimshon said to them, let me now propound a riddle to you. If you will indeed tell it to me within the 7 days of the feast and find it out, then I will give you 30 linen wraps and 30 changes of clothes. But if you are unable to tell me, then you shall give me 30 linen wraps and 30 changes of clothes. And they said to him, propound your riddle that we may hear it. Now he's about to give him a riddle. And I promise you, this is the dumbest riddle ever. There's no way anybody could ever figure this riddle out. Next. I'll give you a riddle. This is a good riddle. What does a man do standing up, a woman do sitting down, and a dog do with one leg in the air? Shake hands. What do you pee? This is church, girl. What kind of congregation do you have here? Shake hands. Okay. See, that's a better riddle than this, isn't it? Okay. So he said to them, out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. But they could not tell the riddle in 3 days. There's no way they could spend 3 years and not going to figure out that riddle. Right? And also, in the Hebrew, it doesn't rhyme. Makal is food, mathok is sweetness, so out of the, well, whatever it said. I don't know. Then it came about on the 4th day that they said to Samson's wife, entice your husband so that he will tell us the riddle, or we will burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you invited us to impoverish us? Is this not so? Samson's wife, this by the way is not Delilah, you understand? This is his first wife. Samson's wife wept before him and said, you only hate me and you do not love me. You have propounded a riddle to the sons of my people and have not told it to me. And he said to her, behold, I have not told it to my mother and father. So should I tell you? However, she wept before him 7 days while their feast lasted. And on the seventh day he told her because she pressed him so hard. Then she told the riddle to the sons of her people. So the men of the city said to him on the seventh day, before the sun went down, well, what is sweeter than honey? And what is stronger than a lion? And he said to them, I love this line, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle. Yes. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson, him mightily, and he went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 of them, and took their spoil and gave the change of clothes to those who told the riddle. And his anger burned, and he went up to his father's house. But Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his friend. So Samson's upset. He goes home to mom and dad, and in the meantime, his wife is given to Samson's companion. Or to, it could be Samson's companion, I think, right? His companion. Who's the his? But after a while, in the time of the wheat harvest, Samson visited his wife with a young goat and said, I will go into my wife in her room. But her father did not let him enter. Her father said, I really thought that you hated her intensely, so I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister more beautiful than she? Please let her be yours instead. Samson then said to them, this time I shall be blameless in regard to the Philistines when I do them harm. So Samson went and caught 300 foxes. That's what you do. And it's so easy to catch 300 foxes and tie their tails together. I could spend my whole life and I don't even see a fox. And took torches and turned the fox's tail to tail and put one torch in the middle between two tails. Then he had set the fire. This is harder to believe than the Jonah story. But it's true. When he had set fire to the torches, he released the foxes into the standing grain of the Philistines, thus burning up both the shocks and the standing grain, along with the vineyards and the groves. When the Philistines said, who did this? And they said, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he took his wife and gave her to his companion. So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. Yeah. Doesn't it sound like a Philistine? Samson said to them, since you act like this, I will surely take revenge on you. But after that, I will quit. He struck them ruthlessly with a great slaughter, and he went down and lived in the cleft of the rock of Etam. When the Philistines went up and camped in Judah, then the Philistines went up and camped in Judah and spread out in Lehi. Next. Lehi, turns out, is the Hebrew word for jawbone. Well, that's kind of punny, right? And I put this because there's the Philistines, and here's in Yehuda, just so you can start seeing some of these, right? And here is in, whenever you have a bait in front of something, that's in. We see it in Bereshit, the first word of the Bible. The ba is in Reshit, in first fruits, in beginning. So Balehi is in Lehi, and Lehi means jawbone. Okay? The men of Judah said, why have you come up against us? Remember, Samson, he said, okay, I'm done with these guys. He's going down, he's sleeping in a cleft of a rock someplace. And the men of Judah said, why have you come up against us? And they said, we have come up to bind Samson in order to do him as he did to us. These are the people, the Philistines come to the people of Judah. Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock in Etam and said to Samson, Do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What then is this that you have done to us? And he said to them, as they did to me, so I have done to them. Right? They burned his wife and father, and he burned their fields. Next. They said to him, we have come down to bind you, so that we may give you into the hands of the Philistines. And Samson said to them, swear to me that you will not kill me. So they said to him, no, but we will bind you fast and give you into their hands. Yet surely we will not kill you. Then they, you know what? I'm going to say this. Then they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. Isn't it nice when you have your word, we will not kill you. And then you can just say, and then you just know they're not going to kill me. Because one person gave their word to another person, and you just believed their word, and they did bind him, but they didn't kill him. Boy, the Democrats need to know that. A lot of people need to know that. You know, because nobody keeps their word anymore. You know, if someone said, okay, well, we're going to bind you, but we're not going to kill you. There's nobody I would trust with that. Next. When he came to Lehi, the Philistines shouted as they met him. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, so that the ropes that were on his arms were as flax that is burned with fire, and his bonds dropped from his hands. So then he found the the jawbone of an ass. It's right under my nose. I couldn't. Thank you for getting it. You're the only one. I thought it was great. Did you get it? Thank you. No. I said, and then Samson found... What? It's right under my nose. Hold on, what is it? The jawbone of an ass. And he reached out and took it and killed 1,000 men with it. Then Samson said, with the lechi of a donkey, lechi's where he is, right? Heaps upon heaps. With the lechi of a donkey, I have killed 1,000 men. When he had finished speaking, he threw the jawbone from his hand, and he named that place Ramath Lehi. Ramath means level or plateau, okay? The plateau of the jawbone. Then Samson became very thirsty, and he called to the Lord and said, you have given this great deliverance by the hand of your servant, and now shall I die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? But God split the hollow place that is in Lehi, so that the water came out of it. When he drank, his strength returned, and he revived. Therefore he named the place En Hakarah, which is in Lehi to this day. So he judged Israel 20 years in the days of the Philistines. All right, next. This place where he prayed for water, and the rock split and water came out, and he named it. And he asked for the water first. And he named the place En Hakarah. Yesterday we talked a little bit about this. Remember, it's not En, it's Ein. Ein Hakarah. Kara means to call. And you can see here's a Kara, because it says, he called its name Ein Ha-Kara. There's Karas in there twice. He called the place the spring of the calling. Make sense? Because he called on God for water. Next. Oh, there's one of them. Kara, Kara. It's in there twice. And you see, the first time we see this word is way back in Genesis 1:5. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And he called. You can see, and, va, yod is he, kara, and he called. Oh, notice here also, in the second line, and the darkness he called, here's another kara. And what did he call the darkness? Lila. Keep that in mind for later in the story. Lila means nighttime. And what did Shimshon mean? Sunshine. Sunshine and nighttime, they don't go together. In fact, whenever you go into the nighttime, what happens? You can't see. And I don't want to give the end of the story away, but what happens to Samson? Is that clever? All right, next. And he called. We just covered. Next. Kara means to call. Next. Here's another place you see Kara. The third book of the Bible, which we call Leviticus, they call Vayikra. Va, there's the vav, and he, yod is he. Yod is also the initial for Yahweh, right? And he kara, and he called, Vayikra. That's the name of the third book of the Bible to a Jew. Next. There's the first verse, yep. And he called out to Moses. You know that the aleph in that word in Leviticus. Notice the aleph. It's a little. That's how it is in the Torah. It's a little aleph there. You want to know why? So do I. I don't know why. Why, Delilah? Next. This is just clever. So since we're here talking about Kara and Vayikra, and the Lord, that's Yahweh. Next. Here is the first sentence in Leviticus. And called, okay, to Moshe, and here's Yahweh, right? That's the first sentence in Leviticus. Next. If you start right here on that Yud, count 7 letters, you get a Hey, count 7 letters, you get a Vav, count 7 letters, you get a Hey. Yahweh is spelled out every 7 letters in the first sentence of Leviticus. For what it's worth. Next. Okay. Therefore he called its name En Hakara. Next. And Ayin Hakara. We talked yesterday. Ayin means the spring, right? And Ayin also means it's the word eye. And what do springs and eyes have in common? Water comes out of them. So that's getting into God's thinking. Okay? And you ever wonder why the word I has a Y in it? Because in Hebrew it's an ayin. Next. Why I has a Y in it. Ayin. And that's the 16th letter. We don't talk about ayin very much, this letter. It oftentimes makes an A sound, okay? So ayin means eye, ayin means spring. Ma'ayan means fountain. Water comes out of fountains. Notice the word, I just wanted to show you this just to show you how these Hebrew words are connected, okay? Because here you can see there's ayin in the word fountain, ma'ayin. And what's mem? Mem represents water. So you have a water fountain, okay? Kind of clever how that all works. And there's another, we could do a whole talk on these. I've been saving them up and putting them in a file, and at some point we'll just do a whole day of these talks. But God will take a word, and from that word, whatever letter that word ends with, a word that comes from that word will begin with the last letter of the previous word. Okay? So in the beginning you have to home. This is in the second verse of the Bible. And the earth was without form and void, and what was it? Darkness was over the deep. To home is the deep. So what comes out of to home? Water. And what comes out of, what's Mayim? Comes out of Mayim is fountains. And what fountains is Ma'ayan. And what comes out of fountains? Nachals, rivers. You see how that, you see it with Abba. Abba is father. Abba ends in a bet. What comes out of fathers? Ben. And Ben ends in an N. What comes out of Ben? Nachal, I think, is grandson. Nachad. And what comes out of Nachad? Great-grandson. And it begins with a dalet, which Nachad ends with a dalet. Isn't that clever how whatever comes out of it, whatever the last letter, you get it. Next. Ein Gedi, you've heard of that one. Okay, the spring of Gedi. Gedi is a kid goat. Okay. The spring of the one calling. We've already talked about that. And I just threw this in because we're talking about Ein, and it's kind of cool. You know the Shema, right? Here it is. Shema Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. You saw that little A, a little aleph in the Vayikra, the first word of Leviticus. Some letters in the Bible are small. Some letters in the Bible are big. And the Shema has two enlarged letters. The Ayin and the Dalet at the end. And that's how it's written in Torahs to this day. They write those two letters bigger. Okay? Now, why? I do know. Next. It's the Ayin is big and the Dalet is big. Next. Ayin Dalet is the word Ad. Ad means to witness. So witness this. Next. Dalet Ayin is the word Da, which means no. So he wants you to witness this verse, and he wants you to know this verse. And when I showed this to a Jew, when they see this, odd, the first thing that comes to mind, and I've asked many Jews, it's not witness. This is the word for eber, forever. So this is letting you know this is forever. That might be the bigger message in those two big letters, that this is an eternal thing forever. That's nice, huh? Okay. Next. And while we're on the Shema, I just wanted to show you the gematria, because the gematria stuff, I don't always throw them in, because people don't like all the number stuff, but this is for Nate. If you put all the digits in for the Shema adds up to 1,118. Whatever that's worth. And what is the Shema? What is the message? If you had to boil it down, you had to name that tune in 2 words. What would the 2 words be that you could boil the Shema down? I would think there's one God. Yes? Next. Which is Echad Elohim. Yes? That's the boiled down version. Echad, by the way, it adds up to 13. Elohim adds up to 86. And if you multiply them, yeah. Isn't he clever? All right. That concludes the Nate portion of the show. Okay. Okay, so we're done with woman number 1 in Samson's life. He wasn't supposed to marry her. He did. She got burned. Number 2. Judges 16. Now Shimshon went to Gaza and saw a harlot there, and he went into her. When it was told to the Gazites, saying, Samson has come here, they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the gate of the city. And they kept silent all night, saying, let us wait until morning light, then we will kill him. Now Shimshon lay until midnight, and at midnight he arose and took hold of the doors of the city. Okay, the gates of the city. Okay, so Samson lay until midnight, and he arose and took hold of the doors. There are the doors. Of the city gate and the 2 posts, and he pulled them up along with the bars. Okay? And then he put them on his shoulders and carried them to the top of a mountain, which is opposite Hebron. That also took a lot of time to make, so ooh and ah, if you don't mind. Enough. There is something deep in that, isn't there? That he took hold of these doors and he carried them up. Yes, it was his arms outstretched on top of a hill. Just okay. This is how that started. Before he took those doors, this is that first verse in this chapter. Samson went up to Gaza and saw a harlot there and went into her. Okay, next. What is Samson doing in Gaza with a harlot? Maybe. Okay. Next. We know Samson's very first words in the Bible are these. I saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore, get her for me as a wife. So we're trying to get in Samson's mindset here. The second thing that recorded in the Bible that Samson said is, but Samson said to her father, get her for me. She looks good to me. So this could be Samson's mindset, right? Maybe this is why he's going into a harlot there in Gaza. But then you come to the book of Hebrews, the Hall of Faith book. What more shall I say? For time will fail if I tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, David, Samuel, the prophets, who by faith conquered kingdoms. Samson makes it into the Hall of Faith as a good guy, not a Gaza harlot visitor. Right? So which is it? We got to figure out, why did Samson go into the harlot in Gaza? All right, next. So when you read this, so he went and came into the house of a harlot, what do you all think? You know, he's in the house of a harlot. But you know what? I didn't put this whole verse in here. I left some of it out. Put the next slide to show the rest of it. Oh, so they went and came into the house of a harlot. We'll put the whole verse. Joshua, the son of Nun, sent 2 spies. Go to the land, especially Jericho. So they went and came into the house of a harlot. Did you ever think that those 2 went into the house of a harlot for fun? Whenever the 2 spies went into the house of a harlot? No, you never think of them going in for the bad reason. But y'all thought Samson did it, you evil. Good. But it's the same, right? And you just, all right, next. Here's the word for harlot. It's Isha, which we already know Isha is woman, right? Isha Zana is harlot. Okay, next. That looks like the same slide to me. Next. And here's the word bow. Bow is go. And look, these are the same words in that Joshua story. He sent 2 spies, go, especially Jericho. So they went, the went is bow, and came into the house of a harlot. It's the same word. So when Samson does it, it's bad man. But when the 2 spies do it, it's like, oh, that's smart thinking, guys. On Samson? When a man loves a woman. I'm sorry. I told you I don't do requests. Unless, of course, I'm requested to do so. But it could be, listen, he's going down to Gaza, which is the enemy camp. And where would you hide? What would be a safe place for Samson to hide out? Maybe that is why he went into the house of the harlot. Maybe. Possibly. I just don't want... Okay, next. And it was told the king of Jericho, saying, Behold, men from the sons of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land. So we have the locals discover the presence of a foreigner. Right? Next. Oh, by the way, that's the one with that's the one up here with Jericho and the spies. And down here, when it was told that Samson has come here, they surrounded the place. It's both. Locals discovered the presence of a foreigner. There might be a parallel between Samson and what's happened with the spies. Next. In Joshua, she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was on the city wall, so that she was living on the wall. Well, that's the spies. And in Judges, Samson lay until midnight, and at midnight he arose and took hold of the doors. So they both had spectacular nighttime escapes. So might be parallels. And remember, Samson then took the gates of the city and went up on top of the hill. I like this, the Akedah, that's the binding of Isaac. And he tells him to go and sacrifice his son, which he does. And then the angel of the Lord says, after the sacrifice is over, then the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son, indeed I will greatly bless you, and I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of heaven and as the sand which is on the seashore, and your seed shall possess the gate of their enemies. Samson possessed the gate of his enemies. Remember, God planned this whole Samson thing to go after the Philistines. So he may not have gone for the hanky-panky. Next. Does anyone, is that two? You jumped two? Go back one. Thank you. This is Jerusalem. This is the Damascus Gate. It's on the Muslim side of the old city. If you go out this gate 140 miles, you hit Damascus, Syria. Okay? And it is on the Muslim side of the city. And this is probably maybe the most famous gate. The most ornate and clever. Okay? And now go to the next one. This is kind of a fuzzy, blurry picture, but these three guys right here, they are Israeli soldiers with full combat gear on and machine guns, and they are possessing the gate of their enemies. Isn't that nice? Goosebump. Next. Here's a more recent picture I took just earlier this year. There's the Damascus Gate. This is new. They just built this. Yeah, it's all concrete. It's like a, it's where the soldiers can stay protected. Yeah, out of the sun and out of gunfire. You know, they can hide behind. Before they were just behind some metal barriers. Not even metal, like fence, fence barriers. So they've built something more permanent there, that the Jews are possessing the gates of their enemy. And at the top of the steps, they built these big concrete fortifications for the soldiers to possess the gates of their enemies. Okay, so we have him taking the gate up the top of the mountain. We saw that. Okay. So the harlot story's done. That's woman number 2. Okay. And now we're going to get to Delilah. Samson had these 3 women in his life. He had the wife, then he had a harlot, and then he has Delilah. And each one of those is a prophetic picture of something. And we're going to tell you tomorrow what they are. That'll bring you back. But we're not done. We're going to do Delilah now. How are we doing on the... All right. Time's good. After this, it came about that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek whose name was Delilah. Okay, you can see Delilah here. There's the Dalet, and then there's the word Lila, which we said was nighttime. Sorek means choice vine, and Delilah means low or languishing. Okay, although she does have Lila in her name, which is nighttime. Next. And this is just reminding you that Lila was nighttime, right? He called the darkness, he called Lila. The lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, "Entice him and see where his great strength lies, and how we may overpower him, that we may bind him to afflict him. Then we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver." So Delilah said to Shimshon, "Please tell me where you get the great strength is, and how you may be bound to afflict you." Samson said to her, "If they bind me with 7 fresh cords that have not been dried, then I will become weak like any other man." And the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 fresh cords that had not been dried, and she bound him with them. Now she had men lying in wait in an upper room, and she said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." But he snapped the cords as a string of tow snaps when it touches fire. So his strength was not discovered. Now you would think, if this guy had half a brain, he would say, "Now wait a minute, what are you doing here?" You know? Okay, I'll take that on the first one. Yeah. Okay. Next. Then Delilah said to Samson, "Behold, you have deceived me and told me lies. Now please tell me how you may be bound." He said to her, "If they bind me tightly with new ropes which have not been used, then I will become weak like any other man." Delilah took new ropes. Now, after the second one, I would be suspicious. And said, "The Philistines are upon you." For the men were lying in wait in the room, but he snapped the ropes from his arms like a thread. Then Delilah said to Samson, "Up to now you have deceived me and told me lies. Tell me how you may be bound." And he said to her, "If you weave the 7 locks of my hair with the web and fasten it with a pin, then I will become weak like any other man." What is this? Oh, I finished down here. So while he slept, Delilah took the 7 locks of hair and wove them into a web. Close bracket. And she fastened it with a pin and said to him, "The Philistines are upon you." But he awoke from his sleep and pulled out the pin of the loom and the web. He said to him, "How can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You have deceived me these 3 times and have not told me where your great strength is." It came about when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him that his soul was annoyed to death. So he told her all that was in his heart and said to her, "A razor has never come on my head, for I have been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaved, then my strength will leave me and I will become weak like any other man." When Delilah saw that he had told her all that was in his heart, she sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, "Come up at once, for he has told me all that is in his heart." Then the lords of the Philistines came up and brought the money in their hands. She made him sleep on her knees and called for a man, and he had him shave off the 7 locks of his hair. Then she began to afflict him, and his strength left him. She said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." And he awoke from his sleep and said, "I will go out as other times and shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had departed from him. Then the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes. Okay, that's good, that's good. Go to the next one. We'll do it slowly like this. Then the Philistines seized, now you're jumping ahead. Then the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes. So there's a blinding. And they brought him down to Gaza and bound him. There's a binding with bronze chains, and he was a grinder in the prison. So he had a blinding, a binding, and a grinding. And what happens when the sunshine goes to the night? And if you just push that button repeatedly, that took about 4 hours. Okay, next. I thought so. However, the hair of his head began to grow again after it was shaved off. Now the lords of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to rejoice, for they said, "Our God has given Samson, our enemy, into our hands." When the people saw him, they praised their God, for they had said, "Our God has given our enemy into our hands, even the destroyer of our country, who has slain many of us." It so happened, when they were in high spirits, that they said, "Call for Samson, that he may amuse us." So they called for Samson from the prison, and he entertained them, and they made him stand between the pillars. Then Samson said to the boy who was holding his hand, "Let me feel the pillars on which the house rests, that I may lean against them." Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there. And about 3,000 men and women were on the roof, looking on while Samson was amusing them. And Samson called the Lord and said, Adonai Yahweh. Remember yesterday we explained that? It's all three caps. Please remember me and strengthen me. Just this time, O God, Elohim, that I may at once be avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Samson grasped the 2 middle pillars on which the house rested, braced himself against them, one with the right hand, one with the left. And Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. And he bent with all his might, so the house fell on the lords and all the people who were in it. So the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those he killed in his life. Then his brothers and all his father's household came down, took him, brought him up, and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoach, his father. Thus he had judged Israel 20 years. Okay. Now, this is going to be some cool stuff. How's the lasagna coming? Is it getting ready? Okay, we'll get 15 minutes. She got it. Okay. There was a certain man in Zorah, family of the Danites, his name is Manoah. His wife barren. Okay, so he got born to elderly barren parents. Who else comes to mind that was born to elderly barren parents? Abraham and Isaac. Give me somebody else. Let's go New Testament. Thank you. Next, please. In the days of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zacharias, division of Abiah, his wife. Her name is Elishabat. Remember what Elishabat means? Elizabeth? El, God, Shabbat, rest. Elizabeth means God is my rest. That's Elizabeth. They had no child because Elizabeth was barren. They were both advanced in years. So there's kind of a parallel here between Samson and John the Baptist. At least they both had parents who were old and barren. Okay? Next. So we're going to give them both a check mark there. Next. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, behold, now you are barren and you have no children, but you will conceive and give birth to a son. So the birth of Samson was prophesied by an angel. That ring a bell? And the angel said to Zacharias, do not be afraid. Your petition has been heard, and your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you will give him the name John. So both of them, Samson and John the Baptist, both had their birth prophesied by an angel. The woman gave birth to a boy and named him Samson. He grew and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir in him. So Samson is filled with the Spirit. And in Luke, we see he will be great in the sight of the Lord. He will drink no wine or liquor. He will be filled with the Holy Spirit while yet in his mother's womb. So Samson and John the Baptist are both filled with the Spirit. Now, Samson, therefore, be careful not to drink wine or strong drink. Right? The boy shall be a Nazarite to God from womb. He will begin to deliver Israel. So he's a lifelong Nazarite from birth. And in Luke, it says he will be great in the sight of the Lord. He will drink no wine or liquor. So John the Baptist is a Nazarite from birth. Are you seeing a parallel here? Samson scraped honey into his hands and went on eating as he went. When he came to his father and mother, he gave some to them and they ate. So Samson ate honey. Now John himself had a garment of camel's hair and a leather belt around his waist, and his food was locusts and wild honey. They both ate honey. That's an odd thing to have in common, right? But they do. Samson's brothers and all his household came down, took him, brought him up, and buried him between what and what? In the tomb of Manoah. Thus he had judged Israel 20 years. So Samson was the last of the Old Testament judges. John the Baptist, truly I say to you, among those born of women, there has not arisen a prophet greater than John the Baptist. And John the Baptist was the last of the Old Testament prophets. Right? So they were each the last of their... All right? Now Samson went to Gaza and saw a harlot there. He lay until midnight, and at midnight he arose and took hold of the doors, the city gate, and carried them up on top of the mountain. Samson is preparing the people for the coming king. Because after Samson, Saul became the king, right? And then David became the king. All right? Next. And David ran over and stood over the Philistine. Oh, this is just letting you know that Samson, remember when he was born, what did it say? He began to free Israel, right? And then David took over. So he's preparing, he's the judge before David, the big king, who's going to finish the job. Next. I don't know why that slide's there. Let's go to the next one. And here in Matthew, in the days of John the Baptist, came preaching in the wilderness of Judea, saying, repent, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. He who is coming after me is mightier than me. His winnowing fork is in his hand. He will thoroughly clear the threshing floor, and he will gather his wheat into the barn. He's preparing the people for the coming king. And Jesus therefore received the vinegar. He said, it is finished. So he finished the job, just like David finished the job with it. Okay. Okay, next. She sent and called the Lord of the Philistines, saying, come up at once, for he has told me all that is in his heart. And then the Lord of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in her hands. So he was betrayed unto death by an evil woman. Samson was. But when Herod's birthday came, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod, so much that he promised with an oath to give her whatever she asked. Having been prompted by her mother, she said, give me here on a platter the head of John the Baptist. So they were both betrayed unto death by evil women. Is there enough here to call these two parallels? Mm-hmm. Samson said, let me die with the Philistines, and he bent with all his might, and the house fell and killed them all. So his death was on public display. And he sent and had John beheaded in prison, and his head was brought on a platter and given to her mother. So another parallel. Okay. We already talked about this. And next. So, here's the big finish. Samson is David's John the Baptist. Because he was the one that prepared for that. Okay, I think that might be it. What's next? Yep, that's it. The bonus is we're going to cover tomorrow who those three women are and how they are, who are they prophetically. The wife, the harlot, Delilah.